The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast with limited commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome to another edition of your No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday, 10 o'clock, right here. And today I have a special show for you, and I'll tell you how this show came to be. I have a good friend of mine, John McCaffrey, who's our guest today. And so John is a former trooper and former U.S. Marshal, and he comes down the road, down my driveway, with this little yellow Mustang that he has. What year was that Mustang again?
1977.
A 1977 Mustang. And on the side of it, I didn't know it was him, there was a sign for his son, an advertising sign for his son. He's running for district attorney again in Livingston County. So I figured, I couldn't see the sign. I figured some real estate agent or something coming down the road. And so John and I have been friends for a while. And my daughters happened to be in town, to both of them at the same time. And I said, well, let's come to the Sun Deck, have a cup of coffee, and we'll kind of talk about you and your life and whatever. I want you to meet my girls because they would be very interested in knowing you, good friend that you are. And through everything that we were talking about, I said, well, by the way, you were involved in a critical part in the capture of Arthur Shawcross, who was a serial killer here in Rochester. And I said, why don't you just recount the story for my girls, if you would, and my wife. And he did. And I'm listening to this, and it was captivating. It was absolutely captivating. All the twists and turns that happened, in this case, in the 80s. And John, I just was compelled to invite you on the show for this week because this is really a story that I didn't hear before in the depth that you explained it, and it's worth telling. And I think everybody who's listening to the radio right now is going to be amazed and surprised at the whole deal. So welcome, and thank you for coming into my office on this beautiful summer morning.
Well, Dom, I'm very glad to be here, and it was a real pleasure for me to finally meet your two daughters, and I can see why you're very proud of them. They've accomplished a lot.
Well, and the thing is that the joy I have in this show sometimes is being able to interview people like you, and you've had a long and storied career in law enforcement, but the Shawcross story needs to be told and understood by people, because especially me, I mean, people like me, I got here in 1994. This is all prior to my experience with Rochester and whatever, but that had to be quite a frightening time for a lot of people. Plus, I mean, the technology that you had back then is not the technology you have now. So let's tell a little bit about who this guy was.
Well, Shawcross grew up in the Watertown area. He first became got everybody's attention back in the early 70s when a young boy by the name of Jack Blake was hanging around the river in Watertown where Art, as he was referred to, would be fishing. And he came up missing. And they could not find his body, etc. Shawcross was looked at as a suspect, but there was nothing to connect him to him, and he didn't cooperate with the investigation. A few months later, a young girl by the name of Karen Ann Hill came up missing, and the state police interviewed, along with the Watertown Police Department people, and Shawcross had been seen with her. So they found her body. She had been strangled and covered up, and they had enough on Shawcross that he admitted killing her. So the district attorney revisited the Jack Blake case, and with the consent of the Karen Hill's parents, made a deal with him that if he would take them to the body of Jack Blake, he would get a reduced sentence.
So let me ask you a question before we go on. Now Shawcross, was he a local, or was he born someplace else? What was his profession? What did he do, and how old was he?
He actually was born in Maine, but his parents moved to the Watertown area. They were not wealthy, not real poor, but he had siblings. He had a sister. Through our investigation later on, he alleged that he was abused and things, but he was truant from school. He was a suspect in three arson cases. Really? When he was a child. He was a bully, a slow learner, that type of kid. So hopping back to the with the district attorney.
Well, now, John, how old was he when he kidnapped those kids? Was he like in his teens, or was it later in his life, or what? I mean, what would you? I know probably you don't have exactly the thing, but I mean, were we talking about like an 18-year-old kid or somebody?
Oh no. He was back from the military.
Really?
He'd served in the Army. Okay. Which we investigated completely, and he fabricated a lot of his stories from being in the Army. So he's back from the Army and living in Watertown. He's a fisherman. He loved to fish and things. So, but you know,
so this isn't like now we're seeing some 18-year-old kids with an AK-47 or something like that. I mean, this or AR-15. This is somebody who's served in the military, and he's an adult.
He is an adult. Yes. Menial jobs, day-to-day jobs, that type of thing. But he would go fishing all the time, and that's where and probably this little boy and this little girl were curious, would ask him questions, and he probably was bothered by them, so he killed them. Okay, and so.
Well, I mean, I hate to ask the tough question, but was there something sexual involved in this thing, or was it? I mean, were any determinations made of his motivation with this?
Those bodies were not brutalized. There was a possibility that he did have some type of sexual relation with Karen Ann Hill. Yes, correct.
Okay, but with the boy, it was pretty much determined that he just got ticked off with this kid and just snapped.
Correct.
In other words, okay.
Correct.
All right.
I mean, probably you can picture that, they're down by the river and he's fishing, and the kid's probably asking tons of questions about, why are you using this worm and not this and everything else, and
something set him off. More than likely, something set him off.
So he did kill the little boy, and he covered up his body. Okay. Which was also what he did with the prostitutes here in Rochester. So he pled and got 15 to 25, and he got paroled after the 15 years because he was more or less a model prisoner. It was while he was in prison that he befriended, by a pen pal, a lady by the name of Rose Wally. She corresponded with him, wrote to him, and when it came time for him to be paroled, she said that he could come live with her, and they would get married.
And where was she living?
She was living in Delhi, New York. Okay. So he got out on parole, went to Delhi, New York. And in Delhi, which is kind of a small town, very similar to Avon or Honey Lake Falls, they did have a police department. And the police chief visited him and told him that he was going to be watched very closely and behaving himself.
So now we have him at a certain place at a certain time, and we're about ready to head into a break, and we're going to move on from where he moves from there and why. This is Dom from my friends at Jack Greco Furniture. You drive your car, you live with your furniture.
That's why Nita and I buy our furniture locally from Jack Greco. Hey, lots of old name furniture manufacturers switch to mass production, producing their furniture who knows where. Why settle for that? Jack has quality pieces made by true craftsmen, and if you need a custom piece, Jack can do that for you too. The season's upon us. Jack has quality outdoor furniture you won't find anywhere else. Go to jackgreco.com. This is Dom for my friend Jim Shelley and his Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage in Lyman, New York. Like I say, a short scoot down 390 to exit 10, make a left at the light. A couple of miles down the road, there's Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage. You can see their nightly shows by going to fanaticspub.com, but this time of the year, his patio is open for free entertainment 3 to 6 on weekends. Go! It's a great place.
Well, welcome back. We're talking to my friend John McCaffrey, former New York trooper and former U.S. Marshal. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about that Marshal thing because that sounds really cool. I mean, that I imagine you carried this badge around with you all the time.
I don't even carry a badge anymore.
But they don't give you a badge like you get pulled over at the side of the road and you say, well, I'm a Marshal. But, there are problems with doing that, too, these days, right?
I actually have three badges. My retired state police badge as an investigator. I have the U.S. Marshal's badge. Yeah. And then I also have a badge from my 14 years with the Department of Homeland Security being a federal security director.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But you're a good friend of mine, and I'm going to do a little retail here. You know who else is a good friend of mine? Gene Cornish. And Gene Cornish will be here on August 16th with the Rascals at the Theater at Innovation Square. So anybody who's looking for tickets, you just go to theaterais.com and get your tickets. Gene's a Rochester guy. He's a good friend. The thing about the radio, about having people on the radio, is some people that are guests of mine, I never hear from again. And some people you're friendly with, and some people become friends. I mean, I consider you a friend. I mean, a warm friend that has a great family, a great career that you've contributed to the world, and something is a little better off now than it would have been because you're here, which I admire. And a great dad and a great son. Greg was a district attorney in Livingston County. We had a little problem with somebody stealing $160,000 worth of parts from us.
Wow.
Yes. That's a whole nother show right there. So we got this Shawcross character, and so he was paroled, and he had, I hear all the time about these people that correspond with inmates, and they get this romantic thing going with somebody who's in, like prison and stuff. It's like, I mean, that's very strange that you would be compelled to do that. But now she was living in what town you said again?
She was in Delhi, New York.
Okay, so they're in Delhi, New York, and the impression I get from this is that the people in Delhi are not real happy that he's there.
Correct. I mean, he was. They were renting an apartment there. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Somebody new comes to town, and in this case, New York State Parole had told the police chief that they had relocated Art there, and that he had killed two children. So he wasn't well received. So Art was smart enough that when he met with his parole officer, as they're required to do, he says, listen, this isn't really working out well for me here in Delhi because the police chief is keeping too close an eye on me. So they relocated him to Rochester, New York.
And this is before, I mean, you didn't have any law that you had to declare that this guy was in your town back then, right? I mean,
correct. There were no statutes that said that parole had to tell law enforcement that he was there. Of course, those laws have been changed now, fortunately.
So the police chief pretty much knew what his job was, and he was putting the heat on this guy regardless. He was making that kitchen a little bit too warm for the guy to stay in anyway.
Exactly. Probably be a little harder to do today, but back then, small town.
Yeah, it had a lot of discretion probably that you wouldn't have these days.
Discretion is a good word to use, Dom. You're correct.
Well, okay, so we're getting a picture of this guy who is someplace where he can't hide. That's the way I would describe this. He can't hide in this little town, and they want him gone. And he wants to be gone because he wants to be someplace where he can't be seen, right? Isn't that basically it?
Correct.
Okay. So he gets to Rochester?
Rochester, him and Rose moved to Alexander Street, downtown Rochester. New York State Parole doesn't really tell anybody that he is there because this didn't work out well by telling the police chief. Mm-hmm. And it was shortly after that the homicide started to occur. I think the first person that he killed was a girl by the name of Blackburn, Dorothy Blackburn. Mm-hmm. Now, the similarity here, as you look in retrospect, was that it was down near Seth Green Park, which is along Genesee River, down near Kodak and places like that. And there was a spot that Shawcross would go fishing. Mm-hmm. So he was there fishing. Dorothy Blackburn, I think she was not known to be a prostitute. She was just probably a bag lady, and she was down.
Okay, all right.
She was down there getting whatever she can find. Mm-hmm. And he killed her, and he buried her under debris, leaves, mm-hmm. brush, and things. So she was actually the first one, and it was several days later that the police found her body when somebody else saw it.
So, generally speaking, and let me go a little bit forward. Approximately, there are probably a lot of people that may have been his victims you don't even know about. I would think, the way these things work, right? I mean. And so you're thinking that he didn't seek her out. She just happened to be in the wrong place or crossed his path at the wrong time. Is that pretty much what you think? I know you can't make a definite, comment about that, but
correct. Almost identical to the two children that he killed. They were in the wrong place, wrong time.
Right. Okay.
So he kills Dorothy and buries her body, and his job at the time when he was in Rochester, was he got a job with this company, G&G Cheese, that makes salads for commercial use. Okay, for caterers and things. Yeah. He was known as a hard worker when we re-interviewed the people at the cheese company, but he worked afternoons. So when he was working, he'd get his job done, and then he'd go out and about, and that's when he'd run into the prostitutes. And he would also take food to the prostitutes, and that was a nexus that we were not able to make, because as the killing starting mounted up of the prostitutes. And what's important to know here, one of the difficulties in the case was that you were always behind. A prostitute and drug user, because they're in the prostitution, do not have a regular life,
regular schedule. Yes, I could see that. Yeah,
if they're missing from their family, or if they had family, nobody really would notice it. Yeah, I mean, the normal person, you go home from work, and if you don't show up from work after a day, somebody's going to report you missing. That's not the case with prostitutes. So the police were always behind the curve in that they were finding a body and then having to figure out where they were the last time that they were seen.
And this is before the day of cameras and all this other stuff. I mean, you didn't have a way of having a traffic camera that's catching somebody, walking from here to there or whatever. So, this whole thing is fascinating. Believe it or not, we're about ready to head to a news break right now, but we're going to come back and talk more about this extraordinary story right after this.
This is Dom Geneva. Gene Cornish of the Rascals will be in town on August 16th to play with the Rascals at the theater at Innovation Square. We both will be attending the Red Wings game on the 15th and have free tickets and autographed autobiographies of Gene's for 6 lucky Red Wings fans. Get your tickets for the Red Wings at redwingsbaseball.com and get your tickets for Friday's Rascals show at thetheaterais.com.
The Red Wings are home this weekend. Friday is Star Wars night with fireworks. Saturday is basketball night with an Isaiah Stewart bobblehead giveaway and fireworks. Sunday is First Responders Day and kids can run the bases. For tickets, visit redwingsbaseball.com.
Well, welcome back. I'm talking with a good friend of mine, John McCaffrey, who is a former trooper. He is a former U.S. Marshal and you were director of the upstate Homeland Security with the having to do with the airports too, right? And
yes, I was 14 years with the Federal Security Director with Transportation Security Administration.
And what was your first year in that position?
That was in 2002 after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
After 9/11, Homeland Security stood up 430 airports, and I was fortunate to be I started out as the number 2 person in Rochester, and ultimately, within 6 months, moved up to Federal Security Director. So I had oversight over Rochester Airport, the airport in Ithaca, airport in Binghamton, and also the one in Elmira.
Well, let me ask you a little off topic because we're talking about the Shawcross thing right now. But this thing with the marshals now, there's still marshals on randomly on flights, right?
Those are federal air marshals. They're federal employees, but they're different than U.S. marshals. Really?
Okay. So I mean, what is the? Tell me what the difference in the category is. Is that one of them is specifically assigned to that particular job?
Well, U.S. Marshals, which is probably the oldest federal law enforcement in the country, are part of the Department of Justice, and the federal air marshals are Department of Homeland
Security. Okay, that's interesting. My daughter worked for Francesca, which you met. She worked for the DOJ down in Washington for quite a while. Now she was an attorney for the University of Notre Dame. She goes, and changes the subject a little bit. She said, the federal government was very good to work with and for. She enjoyed that job.
My government jobs really took good care of me and my family.
Yeah,
it was a great place to work. Public service is a good place to be.
And at the end of the day, what you did meant something, which is anything in life. If you can go home at the end of the day and you made some money to feed your family and you contribute a little bit, I guess that's about life all told. So let's get back on track with Arthur Shawcross. Now he is in. Let me just do kind of a reprise, whatever you say, of what we were talking about. Now he is in Rochester. He apparently. Somebody crossed paths with him when he was fishing or something, and he killed her. And it sounds like it put a taste in his mouth to do more killing, if I was to explain this properly, because now you say he's actually going out and searching for people to kill. Is that pretty much it?
That's pretty true.
I guess possible, probable. Yeah,
very probable.
Okay,
because he as you remember, he moved with his wife. I think it was his 4th wife, Rose Wally, from Delhi to Rochester. And while he's in Rochester, he found another girlfriend by the name of Clara Neal, and he was seeing Clara, seeing Rose, and he was also patronizing prostitutes. Mm-hmm. So there was definitely something going on there. But as the body started to mount up, that's when the police and also the media picked up that there might be a serial killer in Rochester. Mm-hmm. So they started to put the pieces together. Somebody was killing. The common denominator there was most of the victims, or almost all the victims, were prostitutes. Mm-hmm. These were girls that were out on the street working at night. So the police were talking to the prostitutes, even though they had arrested them. There was some type of a bond there. You know, we're protecting you, and they kept warning them that, look, there's somebody out here killing you. You've got to really be careful. And their attitude was, well, it won't happen to me. Mm-hmm. And that actually was not true. It was happening. So the police requested the assistance of the FBI and ultimately the state police, and they did some profiling, and they could not figure out why these girls were.
Let me ask you a question though, because in here there's a thought. I have a compelling question, I think. So you say the prostitutes say, "Well, it's not going to happen to me." What was his looks and his demeanor? What did he look like? Somebody? Was he a small man? Was he somebody that looked like he might be a gentleman? What was he? You know, was he this chameleon that it wouldn't become apparent to you when you met the guy?
No, he was 6 feet 1, 300 pounds.
Wow. Okay.
He was not a good-looking, handsome young male.
Okay.
And
of course, you would have no indication of that. You know.
No, but what the police tried to do is, who is this guy that these girls are comfortable enough to get into a car,
right,
and go with? So would it be somebody in uniform, such as ambulance driver,
okay,
an off-duty nurse?
And you say there's some profiling that was done then, right?
Oh yeah, there's definitely profiling, and the profile said that it should be, as you indicated, some type of a good-looking young male, but that, as it turned out to be, it was not that at all. What it was is that the company that Shawcross was working for, he was working for him in the afternoon, and he'd get his work done, and he would take food to these prostitutes, so they didn't have to pay for it. He'd give them a salad, fruit and things. And so he struck up a relationship with them.
Okay.
So it was this relationship that he convinced them in saying, look,
okay, I
would like to have sex with you.
Well, so let's kind of fast forward to the critical moment, I think, and unless you can think of something in between here that we might want to inject, but the critical moment puts you in a helicopter at some point in time, looking for victims. Or how did you end up in that critical moment where this thing seemed to turn?
The Rochester Police Department had put a lot of pressure in working in the city of Rochester, but there was a body of one of the prostitutes, Elizabeth Gibson, that was found out in Wayne County. So that's when the state police got involved in the case, because they figured that whoever's killing the girls might be dumping the bodies outside, and they wanted it to be a joint investigation.
Right.
So that's when I was brought into the case. I was briefed on the case, and I was working at my office doing paperwork for the end of the year in December and a uniformed trooper who was working traffic control out near Northampton Park in Ogden was approached by a motorist who had found a pair of shoes in the roadway that had been plowed up by the snow. Brought it to the attention of the trooper. The trooper goes back, does a cursory check of the area, and finds a pair of blue jeans in the field. And in the pocket of the blue jeans, fortunately, was the birth certificate of a girl, Felicia Stevens. She was a black female, the only black female victim of Shawcross. The trooper brings it to my attention, calls me. I talk with the crime analysis section, and they tell me that she had not been reported missing, which was not strange, but she was a known prostitute and drug user. They went to her aunt's house in the city, and she had failed to show up for Christmas dinner. So that initiated a search of the Northampton Park area by us, and we utilized the helicopter.
Well, unfortunately, we're heading into another break, and we're going to have to continue this when we get back. But this fascinating stuff.
This is Dom from my friend John McClurg. John has 2 dealerships, McClurg Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram and McClurg Chevrolet, both in Perry. Hey, you don't buy a car all that often, so when you do, shouldn't you go to a place you can put your trust in? You can depend on McClurg. John's dealerships are family dealerships, where people you deal with today are the people you will deal with tomorrow. No nonsense. Go visit them at McClurg ChryslerDodgeJeep.com or McClurgChevrolet.com. This is Dom. I'd like to welcome my latest segment sponsor, Quickly's gas stations and convenience stores. I look for Quickly's myself, 35 stores and all locally owned, and quite frankly, they're really nice. Which leads me to my next thing. I have a page on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. It says businesses I use. These are, well, businesses I use, and people don't pay me to be on that page. It's just that I can give you an example of some of the no-nonsense businesses that I've had good service from. Go check it out.
Well, welcome back. We're talking to John McCaffrey, who is a person who was instrumental in the capture of serial killer Arthur Shawcross. And one thing I admire about you is you're not the type of guy who says, I did this or I was there or whatever. You're not taking credit for any of this. This is a team effort, but you just happen to be in the right place at the right time at some times. One of the things I want to point out, though, we were talking during the break, is that the compelling theory was, from the people, from some of the people in the law enforcement organizations, was that he didn't fit the profile that they were looking for this serial killer, right? Which was kind of a hindrance for you, right?
Yes, it was. And again, once we found the genes of Felicia Stevens, we felt that there had to be a body someplace. So we used our canines, Monroe County Sheriff's Department, RPD had horses. We had the use of the state police helicopter. So for 2 days, we were up flying the helicopter around Northampton Park and looking for the body. And
you're you have a pilot, and you and who else in the helicopter? Just the two of you?
There's the 2 pilots and myself.
Okay.
And an observer.
Okay.
And flying in the helicopter sounds like fun, but it's really work. And the 2 pilots had been up for 2 days. My partners had been there flying with them. And when I came in on the 3rd day and I asked who was going up, they said they had the other work to do. So I volunteered to go do it. And my real goal that day was to go up with the helicopter pilots, fly for a couple, 3 hours, and take them to lunch because they'd been working really hard. And it was while we were up flying, before we were going to take a lunch break, that I wanted to fly from Northampton Park back to the city of Rochester along Route 31, which is Lyle Avenue. And it was while flying over Salmon Creek that I could see a body frozen in the ice of the creek. On top of the bridge was a person in a gray Celebrity with the passenger door open, and he was urinating into a bottle. And as we passed over with the helicopter, of course, it was making noise. He left. So we followed that car, and he took us to the nursing home in Spencerport, where his girlfriend, Clara Neal, worked.
Well, one of the things that you told me when you visited me the other day is that normal procedure is for you to stay with the crime scene, and you made a decision to follow the car, which is admirable, because I know the procedure says this, but this makes more common sense, and that I have to tell you that not everybody would make that decision.
Well, I felt that the body wasn't going to go anyplace because it was frozen in the ice.
Yeah, okay.
So at some point, somebody's going to say, "What happened to the gray car?" So that's why we followed the gray car.
Yeah, and he ends up in this nursing facility or whatever, and you confront him there, or you have the patrol car confront him there?
We followed him with the helicopter. He parked his car. As he got out, I was able to obtain a description of him with his red and black hunting coat, and I had radio contact with the uniformed trooper. Mm-hmm. And he came to the area, and I told him that what door he'd gone into at the nursing home. So the trooper went in and found him, mm-hmm. the gentleman matching that description. And at that point, we left with the helicopter to go back to secure the scene. And that's when the trooper called me on the radio and said that he mm-hmm. did not have a driver's license.
Well, and the rest of the story, it almost sounds like reeling in a fish, which is ironically because this guy was a fisherman. But you guys played him pretty well in this deal, making him kind of feel like you were his friend, or he was on you were on kind of his side and whatever. I mean, spend a minute or two just talking about that.
We brought him back to the scene. We took him to the state police station in Brockport. We just started talking to him to obtain information about him. That's when he told us more, that he had done time in prison, killed the two children. And it was then that some of the ranking police officers said, he kills children. He doesn't kill girls, so you don't have the right people. So we obtained information from him, but we did not have enough to detain him. We took him out to dinner to befriend him and told him that sometime in the future we might want to talk to him again. So we had to allow him to go home that night, and we did set up surveillance on his house. Uh-huh. And the next day when he left his house on his bicycle, we picked him up, brought him in, and started questioning him again. And it was there that we used a little trickery on him, and that those that were interviewing him asked him if his girlfriend was involved with the homicides of the women, because he had given her an earring from one of the bodies.
Oh, okay.
That was the connection. With that, he had enough respect for his girlfriend, I think, so to speak, that he confessed to the homicides.
The whole story is amazing, absolutely amazing, and the whole deal, though, is that after killing the two children, he was given relatively a light sentence, because what he gave in response, what he gave up to get that lighter sentence, was that he told them where the bodies were buried, right?
Where the body of the boy was buried, yes. And so that's why he got 15 to 25. He did the minimum. In prison, he was known as a model prisoner. He didn't cause any problems or anything else. He was probably happy in prison. He was getting 3 meals a day, not have to work very hard. He just did menial things enough to go to the commissary. So his life in prison wasn't mm-hmm. a big hardship on him.
No, but there's something, who knows?
And he was busy writing letters to Rose Wally.
Oh yeah, he's getting girlfriends, and it really is an amazing thing, because you hear about this all the time. Is that somebody's in prison, they're getting love letters from people, and you just wonder what the psychology of the whole thing is. And we're about ready to wrap up the show. But I have to say, I mean, of all the things that you think about in your past career or whatever, is, you know, I mean, this has got to be something that's got to, I mean, it's got to live in your mind to the day you die, and then after that, and whatever. You're at the right place at the right time. And John, I got to tell you, not to blow smoke at you, but, you know, do you make the right decision to say, I know what I know what policy says. Policy says this, but, you know, common sense of humanity says this other thing, and you follow him, and who knows? You know, who knows how many lives you might have saved. I mean, just from that one simple fact of being in the right place at the right time and making the right decision, John.
Well, one of the things we did was, these girls were daughters, sisters, they had brothers, and that's one of the things after he confessed to killing the girls, we worked on him to tell him he needed to do the right thing, because there were 2 prostitutes that were still missing, and he says, "You've got to do the right things for the parents and tell us where these bodies are." And so we instilled in him to do that, and he did the right thing and took us to 2 more bodies. So we were able to, at least for these families, bring closure to their missing daughters.
Well, John, God bless you for what you've done. I tell you, I have a lot of respect for you, and your son following, and maybe not your footsteps, but the footsteps of law enforcement and whatever. It's a great thing to see.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, John, and maybe we'll grab a little bite to eat, maybe, or something, and have you back another day. And when I see that yellow Mustang coming down the road, I know now that it's not a real estate agent.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you next week, gang.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.